presentation information also covers the Ambrose.
When Ambrose brought me in the office and he came up and he said, "Can you change your policy?" That's what I just, whatever, don't tell me what to do. I'm changing my office policy.
That would be the batch thing, or just
Tell me.
Who's
Who's the we can all kind of behind you, or we can let you do the presentation and then all get together for a picture.
Justin actually responded to a post I made.
We'll do it.
I don't normally get people giving detail in public or other. I do get a lot of replies when I go around town. I appreciate it.
2 years ago.
Factual, detailed, specific. Then, well, you know,
I got one 2 years ago.
Brittany Tractor Supply.
Or she just filled
I have one gentleman that asks me that every time. And I like the guy. I didn't say that. I'm like,
Right, yeah, I know. Yeah, 2 years ago I gave it to Vicky. To warn you, filled it out. I have my own opinion.
I just
Yeah, so she filled it out.
sometimes. Since this is a, but the last time
I think in Clinton though, they have the boat thing, there's like the water there and then they do something.
tracker.
Tracker.
Yeah. Dragging all day, and I saw 15 minutes and grabbed myself a 15 minute
Everybody
nap.
else
Feel a little
says
better.
we're south, and my farm is south of town. I wouldn't like it.
Tell you what, yeah.
Tractor Supply does to do that.
Tell them to go write a letter to their Tractor Supply.
Oh, there's Daniel. Kind of waiting to see if Brian shows up.
I wonder on traffic flow though, when I was reading through this earlier on it, is some of Warrensburg is because some of the streets don't go in. You go up, but you gotta go this way or that way, and it's like,
Seems like every other.
I saw Daniel earlier today, and he was running
it really improved.
You're right.
I remember
Brian.
an average. I was like,
Yeah, I saw
town. And you can't go Holden. You know, you got a UPS truck, you get traffic, and so Ridgeville significantly improved through.
We only had one in 1970 when I moved here, it was Park Street. It was the only light we had in it.
Yeah.
that's kind of
So,
look at the big picture. That's what I told him.
I'm trying to be out at 2:30 in the morning.
This is tough.
They flash everything.
Okay.
I think they do.
It's coming.
That's why I told him about false teeth.
I love Lloyd. That's the best. Inherited bad teeth.
Oh my goodness.
I need bifocal so
I
bad.
told him I seen.
Yeah, I'm noticing that
Unless there's something
reading
missing,
is a little
I
harder.
definitely support it.
Oh, yeah.
But even with my
You need the
bifocals,
little-
I can't go up the steps with them on because I fall up the
Because they,
steps.
Yeah,
yeah, the world swishes on you, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's kind of hard too. I've never had to do the bifocals, so. But I had the cataract surgery already. So.
I'm sure. Harold, you guys ready?
Yep.
Yeah.
Go for it.
We'll go ahead and call this meeting back to order.
Brooks,
Here.
Jacobs.
Here.
Holmberg,
Here.
Allen.
Here.
Lund.
Here. Approval of minutes.
Move to approve?
Brooks,
Yes.
Jacobs.
Yes.
Holmberg,
Yes.
Allen.
Yes.
Lund.
Yes. Moving on to adoption of agenda.
Move to adopt?
Brooks,
Yes.
Jacobs,
Yes.
Holmberg,
Yes.
Allen.
Yes.
Lund.
Yes. Moving on to item 6, a presentation. We have a badge pinning for our new K9, Negan. You get to officially meet him.
Yes.
All right, we're gonna have all council join Rich here in the front.
You don't have to give an oath this time, Cindy.
Oh, okay. Get the right, raise your right
paw,
paw.
bark twice.
Pretty dog.
All right, well, thank you guys. This is K9 Negan. This is our newest police dog. So, you guys can look, see him and ask him. This dog is probably more than anything we have a community dog. And I say that because not one single penny of taxpayer money was spent on the dog. This time last year, Adam told me we were going to have to replace our dog, and so we started budgeting for about half a dog because we couldn't afford to budget for the whole dog. And we found out in early January that Gunner had a degenerative spinal disease, and so we were going to need to replace him sooner than we thought. And so we started a GoFundMe in end of January, and by I think the end of May we had raised money to almost buy 2 dogs. So it's an indication of how supportive this community is of the police. And so we finally got them, and we were standing before you with them. Adam's excited, Negan's excited. So as is our tradition, we're going to pin on his badge. We always have somebody important to the officer pin the badge. So I couldn't think of anybody more appropriate than Adam and his wife Cecile and their daughter Aniston. So if you guys will do the honor. It's just like pinning a real officer badge. One thing too, I know that all of you were very involved with the name of the dog, and initially we were going to rename the dog, but we found out when Adam got back from training that his name is actually used for a trigger for the command. So his name is Negan, and it will remain so. So all of you Negan fans are happy about that. So thank you guys.
Help his anxiety when there's a whole bunch of people around.
I'd be nervous too if someone just dragged me in front of a group of people. Speech.
Thank you all.
Really?
The breed does that. I don't know why. It's really funny. The breed does something the breed does. He tucks his tail. Because mine did that too. Yeah, mine did that too. But she was as confident as could be. But she tucked that tail. You know.
Which breed?
Belgian Albion.
Well, we're glad to officially welcome Negan, and we're excited that the community was so supportive in that, and we're just happy for you, happy for Wade, and the life that Gunner gets to lead moving on as well. Moving on to item 7, first and second reading of ordinances. Item 7.1, an ordinance authorizing and directing the issuance of Neighborhood Improvement District Limited General Obligation Refunding Bonds, Hawthorne Development Project, Series 2019, and certain documents and actions by the city, presented by Sid Douglas of Gilmore and Bell.
Sid and I will be here, but we do have another representative here this evening from Gilmore Bay.
So my name is David Martin. I'm also with Gilmore and Bell. I'm one of Sid Douglas's partners, and I'll be covering for him this evening and tell you a little bit about the bonds and the purpose of these refunding Neighborhood Improvement District special assessment backed bonds. So you have an outstanding series of bonds that was issued for this Hawthorne project in 2011, and those are outstanding in the amount of $2,390,000, and those are being refunded in their entirety by this new issuance. Now, the new issuance is only $1,695,000, and the reason for that difference is there is a city contribution of $520,000, and then a $260,000 reserve fund balance that's being released from the old bonds that will be applied towards paying down principal on the old bonds, so that your new principal amount is significantly lower than the amount that's being refunded. There were 6 banks that bid on this. It's a privately placed transaction, so you only have one bondholder, as opposed to some of the other bonds that have been issued by the city that access the capital markets, and you may have numerous bondholders of the same issue. This is placed with an investor bank. There were 6 bidders. The interest rates range from 2.17% to 3.75%. And KeyBank was the lowest bidder, and is the bidder that's represented in the bond documents that are before you this evening. So the difference between that interest rate and the 4-point-some interest rate that was the average coupon on the existing bonds produces over $220,000 in savings over the remainder of the life of the refinancing bonds. And so that's about 9.3% of the principal amount of the bonds that are being refunded. So significant savings over the remainder of the life, and these new bonds will be outstanding until 2031. Does anybody have any questions on the refinancing or the bond documents?
I'd just like to point out, so when I first came in as a city manager, this was one of the issues that was a priority for council, was the financial viability of getting this debt off of our plate. And so with this refinancing, so a combination of the refinancing plus some recent sale of some of that property, like the Garden Walk and Magnolia Ridge and some of those types of things, this will make this much more financially sustainable for the city moving forward. Between the NID revenues, some of the proceeds from selling property, and then the refinancing puts it at a much more manageable level, that it won't have nearly as severe of a financial impact to the city's budget in the future as it would prior to doing this refinancing and some of the other mechanisms we've done. So it kind of feels good to have this in a more sustainable, manageable issuance than what it was previously, where it represented almost a $250,000 payment every year for the city. And now between the NID and our proceeds that we have, it'll be less than $100,000. And then we still have some money in reserves and restricted, I should say, to make several of these payments for several years, while we're waiting for some other property to develop and sell as well. So
That would be a question I have, on the Hawthorne. How many more properties do we have?
you still have the remainder of lot 7, you have lot 6, and I believe 8 and 9.
And when we guess if those all sold, it would pay off the $1,600,000.
Typically, what we've been doing is selling them for the outstanding net assessments on those. And so we have a chart that outlines those, and anyone that wants to make an offer, we entertain those offers, and then we go into closed session and discuss those.
Okay, thank you.
So this part here that has 2020 and then 2031, does that mean if we don't do anything, it's all paid off at 2031?
Correct.
Nothing else sells or anything?
Yeah, those are your
How
payments.
old
to
will I
lenders.
be?
Any questions? Discussion? If not, I'd entertain a motion to
Bill
move this.
to reading. Said Bill, second reading, I think, if I use all the words.
Yep,
Got it,
second reading,
got
yeah,
it.
sure.
Brooks,
Yes.
Jacobs.
Yes.
Holmberg,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Lund.
Yes.
This is an ordinance authorizing and directing the issuance of Neighborhood Improvement District Limited General Obligation Refunding Bonds, Hawthorne Development Project, Series 2019, and certain documents and actions by the city. This is for adoption or rejection. Brooks,
Yes.
Jacobs.
Yes.
Holmberg,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Lund.
Yes. Moving on to item 7.2. An ordinance approving and accepting the minor plat of Thousand Oaks Meadow, a subdivision in the city of Warrensburg, Missouri, located at 603 East Hill Lake Road. Barb.
Mr. Mayor and City Council, this is the plat that follows the rezoning that you did a few months ago there off of Hill Lake Road where the Nazarene Church sits. At the time, there was some question about how it would develop, and I think in the applicant's mind there is still some question as to that, but this plat would allow them to have a lot, it's lot 2 on the plat, that they could then market, so it would create a legal lot for them to sell. So the property, the north part was rezoned, and on the plat it is shown correctly as R3. Some of the land for our lot 1 and lot 3 on the plat is not shown correctly as in terms of what it is zoned. So if you're comparing the zoning map in the packet and your memory of what the zoning was a month ago to what the words are on the plat, they do not match. And so if you look at our list of conditions, one of those conditions is that they show the zoning correctly. This lot 2 is shown correctly, not all of lot 1 is shown correctly. So that's one of the items that needs to be corrected. There are several items in that staff report and ordinance that need to be corrected more than you are used to seeing. However, none of them really change the substance of the plat. Correcting these items won't entail moving lot lines or changing the right-of-way or anything of that nature. So staff is comfortable recommending approval of the ordinance with this many conditions. This does create a new street, Thousand Oaks Drive, that comes off of Zoll Street and provides lot 2 with the 60 feet of frontage on a city street. Be happy to answer any questions. Planning and Zoning recommended approval at their meeting last week.
So on 7, Barbara, includes the 100-year floodplain, that becomes a housing area? They're gonna be in the floodplain like Broadview?
No, they just need to include a statement on the plat that says it's not in the 100-year floodplain. It doesn't put it in or out of the floodplain, it documents the status it already has.
Any questions for Barb? Discussion? Entertain a motion to second reading?
Move to Sid Douglas, second reading by title.
Brooks,
Yes.
Jacobs.
Yes.
Holmberg,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Lund.
Yes.
This is an ordinance approving and accepting the minor plat of Thousand Oaks Meadow, a subdivision in the city of Warrensburg, Missouri, located at 603 East Hill Lake Road. This is for adoption or rejection. Brooks,
Yes.
Jacobs,
Yes.
Holmberg,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Lund.
Yes. Moving on to item 7.3, an ordinance authorizing the city manager and city clerk to execute a maintenance pledge agreement concerning Brentwood Plaza Lot 2 in the city of Warrensburg, Missouri, presented by Slim.
Mr. Mayor, members of the city council, if you, some of you were on council at the time when we did lot 1, which involved the Chipotle property. With that, because of the fact we do not know at this time when improvements may have made to McGuire Street where the exact location of curb, gutter, and sidewalk will be. So as lot 2 is currently being developed, we've asked for the developer to present a pledge or a check to the city for the future improvements there in the amount of $10,530. This pledge agreement would take place or be used for future construction of curb, sidewalk, and storm gutter on that location there at that time. Staff asked for approval of this ordinance.
Any questions for Slim?
Move said bill be passed the second reading by title.
Brooks,
Yes.
Jacobs.
Yes.
Holmberg,
Yes.
Allen.
Yes.
Lund.
Yes.
This is an ordinance authorizing the city manager and city clerk to execute a maintenance pledge agreement concerning Brentwood Plaza Lot 2 in the city of Warrensburg, Missouri. This is for adoption or rejection. Brooks,
Yes.
Jacobs,
Yes.
Holmberg,
Yes.
Allen.
Yes.
Lund.
Yes. Moving on to item 7.4, an ordinance amending ordinance 5543 concerning the adopted fiscal year 20 annual budget for the community investment program. Slim.
Mr. Mayor, members of City Council, we had a heating and air conditioning unit on top of City Hall that we knew was going to potentially need to be replaced. It didn't live up to expectations, and passed away sooner than we anticipated, so we had to replace it, so this is what the budget amendment is in regard to.
Any questions for Slim?
So this is money that was in 19's budget, we're just moving it to 20, is that what I'm understanding it?
Any discussion?
Move said bill be passed the second reading by title.
Brooks,
Yes.
Jacobs,
Yes.
Holmberg,
Yes.
Allen.
Yes.
Lund.
Yes.
This is an ordinance amending ordinance 5543 concerning the adopted fiscal year 20 annual budget for the community investment program. This is for adoption or rejection. Brooks,
Yes.
Jacobs,
Yes.
Holmberg,
Yes.
Allen.
Yes.
Lund.
Yes. All right, moving on to item 7.5.
A long one.
Very long. All right. An ordinance granting Missouri American Water Company its successors and assigns for the renewal term of 20 years the right, authority, power, and franchise to establish, construct, operate, and maintain the City of Warrensburg's all equipment, works, and plants necessary and requisite to operate and maintain a waterworks for the purpose of supplying and furnishing water to the city and the inhabitants thereof, and grant to said company the right to use the streets, alleys, avenues, lanes, and other public places thereof. Therefore. Harold.
Alright, so this is a uncommon, rare opportunity for council, I guess. This only happens once every 20 years. So this is a 20-year agreement, which basically gives them a utility company right and authority to be inside city right-of-way, to put their infrastructure, and then gives them the responsibility for maintenance and helps set some of the expectations for basically how they act in right-of-way, so to speak. So really the only significant change this contract versus the last one was with the potential of transitioning from asphalt streets to concrete streets, is a requirement in there that if they have to cut into a concrete street, that any panel they cut, they have to replace the entire panel, not just a portion of the panel. That helps maintain the integrity of the street, helps decrease potholing and some of that kind of stuff when they replace an entire panel versus cutting half the panel out and only replacing half the panel. So they have agreed to that in this. They did have some other things that they wanted to include in the agreement, but towards the end they kind of backed off of that with some leadership change and those types of things. So City Attorney and I have reviewed this as well as staff, and we would recommend approval of this at this time, and then you won't have to deal with this one for another 20 years.
I was intrigued with section 13 drop boxes. That was just thrown in there. The company agrees to maintain the existing drop box for payment. Where's that at?
It's in our
It's back
entryway.
behind City Hall.
No, that's right.
We've got one right by our front door.
Lock upstairs.
Yeah,
I've never used
by our
it, so.
bulletin board. Have you seen our bulletin board when you walk in?
Mhm.
Yeah, it's right there. There's a box, and it's got their name on the side of it. Yeah, you can use it, save you postage, you know.
I'll tell my husband.
Yeah.
Never mind the 49 cents
They-
of gas
they
you use to
check it
drive up here
every
to drop it
day.
off.
Really, I'd encourage you. Be sure it drops when you put it in.
Or you can pay it online,
There we
Yep.
go.
whatever.
Any questions for Harold?
So obviously Doug's kind of looked over this. There's nothing that we need to be alarmed of or.
No, in fact, the changes that have been included address concerns that have been issues for the city over the course of the last franchise. So this is progress in the right direction, and will hopefully preclude some of the issues that we've faced in the past.
Move the said bill be read the second reading by title.
Brooks,
Yes.
Jacobs.
Yes.
Holmberg,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Lund.
Yes.
This is an ordinance granting Missouri American Water Company, its successors and assigns for the renewal term of 20 years the right, authority, power, and franchise to establish, construct, operate, and maintain the city of Warrensburg all equipment, works, and plants necessary and requisite to operate and maintain a water works for the purpose of supplying and furnishing water to the city and the inhabitants thereof, and grant to said company the right to use the streets, alleys, avenues, lanes, and other public places therefore. This is for adoption or rejection. Brooks,
Yes.
Jacobs,
Yes.
Holmberg,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Lund.
Yes. Moving on to item 8, other business. First up, we have a resolution of the Council of the City of Warrensburg accepting a proposal prepared by Mike Keith Insurance for property, liability, and cyber insurance for 2020. Greg?
Yes, Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council, the city's property and liability and cyber insurance is set to expire on January 1st, 2020. A renewal quote was put together by Mike Keith Insurance, Inc., and delivered to us last week. And it shows a total increase from year to year, 2019 to 2020 of 2.6%, or $8,149 for all premiums. That breakdown is as follows. There was a $3,558 increase for general liability insurance, $4 increase in employee benefits liability, $962 decrease in law enforcement liability, a $4,916 increase in property, $3 increase in inland marine, $3,141 increase in auto, a $28 increase in optional terrorism. There was a decrease due to endorsements over the past year at $3,539. And then there was a $1,000 increase in the excess cyber liability policy. We have reviewed this and staff recommends approval of the resolution as submitted. If you do have any questions this evening about the policy, Mike Keith is here this evening.
It's a lot of money, but you have to have it, so.
Any questions for Mike? Would entertain a simple motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Brooks,
Yes.
Jacobs.
Yes.
Holmberg,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Lund.
Yes. Moving on to item 8.2, retail recruitment service contract extension. Harold?
So this is a 2-month extension, so I believe our contract with the retail coach expires December 15th. We just received RFP responses today for companies interested in continuing to offer these services to the city. Staff needed some time to review over those, and given that we only have one council meeting in this month, and given that we're headed to a economic development conference in Texas in January, wanted to make sure that these services continue. So I did ask for a 2-month extension until council could take action to approve a new contract with whatever company it chooses to continue to do business with. So this is a simple 2-month extension of that contract that we currently have until we get a new one in place.
Has he had proposed another one already to us?
He was one of the respondents to our RFP today, along with some other companies, and we plan on bringing that decision back to council in January.
So we're gonna extend it 2 months, and then if we go with them again, there'll be a new 12-month, or we're just gonna be
Correct.
part of the two?
There will be a new 12-month contract.
Okay.
Yeah, which will probably start in February.
Okay.
And that would be the same with any company. Even if we went with a different company, we would probably finish this contract out until the 2-month extension was done. That way they're helping us in Texas
Right.
in January. and then we can make the transition, cause that'll give us, it'll be tight, but getting ready for ICSC in Las Vegas in May, we would have some time there. If we chose to switch companies, that they could get up to speed and have us prepared for that as well. Or if we choose to continue forward, I haven't had a chance to read the RFP, so I don't know what the comparison is right now, but that leaves all options on the table for us going forward without jeopardizing our success at any future conferences.
What did this company do for us at Chicago?
They have a booth there, and then they help set up contacts with developers and retailers prior to, so we have a chance to meet with them while they're at the conference.
They make the appointments.
And they also
They
prepare all the
usually do,
documents
yeah.
we were handing
That'll be
out.
at Chicago,
Bring
it'll
all
be
the
at the
data.
Las Vegas conference as well as this conference in Texas next month.
In addition to preparing the flyers, they maintain the online presence that we link to from our website. So it looks like it's on our website, but that retail dashboard is there. They maintain it and create the content for it.
Yeah, and they update that data every year, after the first of the year with new information from credit cards and cell phones and all that kind of stuff.
Kind of embarrassed. I thought Barbara did all those flyers. I was real impressed.
I just hit print.
But I think it's been a good asset, because when I went on the council first, we didn't have this, so I think we did first probably.
They've been a good company to work for, but, every 4 to 5 years, we try to rebid it out to make sure that we have the best and we're getting the best price. And this is our way to kind of help keep them honest on that.
Any questions for Harold?
Nope.
Make a simple motion. Approve.
Was that you? Nolan?
No.
Brooks,
Yes.
Jacobs,
Yes.
Holmberg,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Lund.
Yes. Moving on to item 8.3, a request for funding for the Christmas store from the Stevenson Fund. Cindy?
Yeah, this is an annual request. They're requesting $600 from the Stevenson Fund, and it's to feed the needy poor. Around the Christmas holidays, last year they served 421 families for a total of 1,053 individuals. And I did talk to one of the workers today, and they really have a need again this year. They really would appreciate the support, and I think it's a good cause.
Entertain a
approve.
simple motion.
Brooks,
Yes.
Jacobs,
Yes.
Holmberg,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Lund.
Yes.
Thank you.
Moving on to item 8.4, a request for $1,000 for project graduation 2020. And then I guess
That's
you
a,
can present this, or Stormy's back there. if
yeah,
you wanna
Stormy's
come.
back there. Maybe she
You wanna
wanna
come
give us.
tell us about it, Stormy?
Mm-hmm.
I told her, I got her letter, one of the quickest ones I've gotten from any of the classes. Usually I don't get them till after the first of the year,
Well,
but
we like
Stormy's
being
right on.
Don't build her up too much.
I'm just excited to be back to talk to people.
Just say, do we need to put you on the clock? We know you can talk.
What can I do to get back in front of the council? No, it is exciting. We are doing project graduation, so finally I have a senior, and I know there's a few other parents in the room with seniors. We have 196 seniors this year. We're hoping to have as many as possible join us, and then of course some of them will have guests. We're changing some things up, trying to have a lot of exciting events for them, not just let them kind of slough off in the corners. So each hour on the 20th, we have a lot of different things coming up. We're doing Family Feud, Minute to Win It games, giving away lots of prizes during that time. We have Central Logos are donating t-shirts for every senior, whether they come or not, whether they graduate early, all that kind of stuff. Working hard to make sure we feed them well, hydrate them. We're doing all kinds of games and activities, from tricycle races, because as you guys remember at Bergfest, I love the tricycle races, so we're hoping to have those. We're going to have, you name it, casino games with the Elks Lodge. We're going to have, I just can't even name everything. The hypnotist is already booked, all kinds of cool stuff. But anyway, full night. If you'd love to volunteer, we'll take you, because we'll be there all night long.
Now, where is it this time?
It's going to be at UCM. So it'll be
The
in the
multi?
yeah, so no, it'll be in the rec center, so
okay.
we'll have the rock wall, we'll have
Okay.
archery, the large yard games, big pink volleyball tournament, so all kinds of cool stuff going on. We have a sponsorship program, so we'll be advertising to the community and thanking people for being a part of our sponsors. January 30th, we're going to have a auction. I love auctions. And so we're going to have one of those. That's going to be our big event to raise money. And then we'll have a drive for your school with Ford because that's a great event for us. And then hopefully that'll be it. We wrapped it up, raised enough money to be able to support the whole program. So it's kind of what we have going on. The kids are excited. My kid keeps coming home telling me all these other things he wants to do, and I'm like, great, get out there and raise money. I don't know what else to tell you. So it has been a lot of fun. We've had a lot of parents who are showing up at our meetings. Parents are like, well, they'll come at first and then they'll leave. But at each meeting, we still having somewhere between 14, 15, 16 parents every time, and not the same one. So it's good that they're excited. Today I got a flood of emails like, hey, I know I haven't been there. I still want to be involved. I'm going to do more than just be there that night. So tell me what you want. I'm like, great. I need you to buy a ticket. I need you to give me an auction item. They're like, I figured you'd say something. And I'm like, you asked. So anyway, we appreciate your support. I know you've always been great to support our seniors, and it's important that we support them and show them that we're behind them. So anyway, I won't be here all night, but thank you. Any questions? None? That must have been amazing.
You are, Stormy.
Thanks.
You are amazing.
Thanks. You know what that clap was about? He just volunteered to buy a table at the auction.
That's what I'm afraid to say.
She needs to work with you here. She's good.
And she's
She's
well, I would move to approve.
good. Brooks,
Yes.
Jacobs.
Yes.
Holmberg,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Lund.
Yes. Moving on to item 8.5, Whiteman Area Leadership Council Grant Funding Match, presented by Harold.
So, we've discussed this off and on for a little while about the need to do a housing study to help us have some data and some information to help us make decisions with regards to what is the need for housing, how do we best approach that, et cetera, et cetera. So, Whiteman Area Leadership Council recently applied for some new state funding that was available. The Missouri Military Community Partnership Program. This is due to some hard work by Joe Driscoll, our military advocate. And WAC was one of 3 organizations that was awarded some of this money. And so WAC applied to do some preparation, getting ready to do a full-fledged housing study as well as a child care needs assessment. And as we talked about this on the WAC board, having these types of assessments are not very common, especially when you add in a military component, so we want to make sure that we get the right data and information and ask the right questions. And so what this is to actually help us develop a scope. So this is going to help us hire a company to come in, develop what those questions are, what the specifications are to conduct the assessment, what information we expect back. So that way then we can bid that out and actually do the assessments. It was a $17,000 match from the program, so it's a total of $34,000. So WAC needs to come up with $17,000 in local match. So what I'm asking is for the Warrensburg community to do its part and meet half of the match. I have not had anyone volunteer to help pay for this yet. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that it's only developing a scope of services and not doing the actual study. So I'm asking the council to fund $8,500 of this, which would be half of the $17,000, so that WAC can proceed and get the scope of services done, and hopefully we'll have better participation from local entities when it comes time to do a local match for actually doing the assessment. And we do plan to hopefully apply for this funding again next year to do the full scope of services, and get reports back and data and information, which will be much more expensive than what this is. So, be happy to answer any questions.
I think it's important.
this is going to cover the region though, right?
That's
This is
correct. It'll be a regional partnership, so it would include Sedalia, Knob Noster, all of us.
Have we reached out to Sedalia or?
They have representation on the walk board, so they're aware of the need for the match.
We're setting the trend by coming up with our portion being, the closest large city. But it still leaves room for them to step up and fund their portion as well, or other portions. Any other questions for Harold? Would entertain a motion if there's no discussion?
I move to approve.
Brooks,
Yeah.
Jacobs,
Yes.
Holmberg,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Lund.
Yes. Moving on to item 8.6, minimum lot size ordinance discussion presented by Barb.
Mr. Mayor and City Council, at the October council meeting, there was a discussion about the ways to incentivize more affordable housing and kind of that starter home type unit here in Warrensburg. There was a discussion and a presentation by the city manager at that meeting where you looked at 5 different schemes of ways to approach that topic, and also the idea of doing nothing, making no changes. And coming out of that meeting, the consensus was to explore reducing the minimum lot size in what we would consider a mixed lot subdivision. So the size of the lots would vary within a single subdivision. There are other, I'm saying mixed lot size because within the world of planning, mixed use development or mixed developments are terms that have other meanings, and I don't want to confuse this discussion by inadvertently bringing those meanings into the conversation. So this is a conversation about the size of our lots within our zoning districts and within our subdivisions. So we haven't been referring to them throughout this whole time as mixed lot size or mixed lot projects, but that's what, with this staff report, we've kind of introduced that language. So looking at what staff has proposed coming out of that last discussion was the idea that at the time we were talking about maybe allowing, we had done a for instance number of one reduced size lot of 6,000 square feet per 5 regular size lots of 7,000 square feet. So staff has spent a couple months putting numbers to that, and at this point would recommend, if we're doing mixed lot projects, mixed lot subdivisions, we would recommend doing one reduced size single family lot of 5,500 square feet per 3 regular size lots of 7,000 square feet each. That then could result in a project that has 75% of the lots being 7,000 square feet and 25% of the lots being 5,500 square feet. With that as our recommendation, there was some thought put into why 5,500. So you have right now in your minimum lot size requirements 3 factors. One is lot width, one is lot depth, and one is lot size. So right now, the current requirement in the zoning ordinance is that you have 60 feet of frontage on a city street or 35 feet of frontage at the curb line on a cul-de-sac lot. That's your minimum width, your minimum depth of 100 feet, and your minimum lot size of 7,000 square feet. So one of the first 2 variables has to be greater than the minimum to get to the 7,000 square feet. So when we looked at where we would draw the number on a minimum lot size, setbacks was a factor in that for me, and we addressed that in the 4th point. But in the laying out of a subdivision, the easiest number to vary is going to be the lot width as opposed to the lot depth. If our goal as a council and as a city is to spread those around the project and the subdivision and not have them all on one cul-de-sac or all clustered in one area, but to have them throughout the area, then the lot depth of the majority of your lots is going to dictate the lot depth of that street. So we're not going to see the lot depth change a great deal, because you're not gonna have lot lines that go in a straight line and then come down and go back up in the backyards. I mean, that's not gonna work for utility easements, that's not gonna work for fences, that's not gonna work for a lot of reasons. So I don't think you're gonna see your lot depth, even if we reduced it to 75 feet, I don't think that's practically gonna help anybody. So we looked at reducing your lot width. To hit the 7,000 number, then, if you have the minimum lot width of 60 feet, and then your lot depth has to be at about 115, 117 to hit your 7,000 number. So using that, we went with the 5,500. That gives you some flexibility in your depth. You could go down to the minimum of 100. You're not likely to, and so we held it at 5,500. So we're saying that in order to accomplish a lot of 5,500 and then have a buildable product, we would reduce the minimum lot, recommend reducing lot width to 50 feet. We would recommend reducing your side setback requirement to 5 feet on each side. Right now it's at 7.5 feet. If you go lower than 5 feet, you then have an impact in your building code about number of openings on those. So you start to have issues with putting in windows and putting in doors on that side. If you hold at 5, then you won't have any of those issues. And we could foresee that the original builder might say, that's no big deal, I won't put any windows in, I won't put any doors in, I wanna go down to 3 feet. But the person that buys it, or the second or third person that buys it, they're going to say, this is ridiculous, this room has no windows, I'm gonna hire a guy to put in a window. And they're not gonna be allowed to do that, or they're gonna do that, and then we're gonna have to come out and inevitably enforce against them. So we would recommend holding that at 5 feet. And then out of a concern for aesthetics and parking, we would state that there be a maximum, and you rarely see us, right? We always talk about minimums. This is a maximum driveway width of 20 feet. So that would allow for a 2-car garage with driveway in front. It will not allow for a wing out. So if you had the wing out, you're basically you would have 20 feet of grass in the front yard. So we wanted to keep the look of the subdivision with driveways and lawns, and so we're stating a maximum width of a driveway width of 20 feet. That would allow you to have it, because you've got to have a driveway and a garage combination in this city. On new construction, you would have with a 2-car garage and the driveway in front, that would give you 4 legal parking spaces, which could give you as much as a 5-bedroom house if you could fit that on there. So I think it still gives some options in terms of bedrooms, but it doesn't give you 6, 7, 8 bedroom houses. So there is an impact to that requirement. Our intent there was to have a lawn in the front of that house, as you would the other lawns in front of the other houses in the project. So if obviously a project like this goes through our typical platting process. As you're well aware, in that platting process, if it meets the adopted code in terms of all the different requirements for street widths, lot widths, depths, etc., then it's a ministerial act of council to approve it. If you want to have some more of a case-by-case analysis of how the subdivision is laid out, or where that is laid out, how it's put together as a project, then staff would write this ordinance so that it requires an overlay as well, so a zoning overlay as well as the plat. And so that's one of our questions for you this evening, is we have not drafted this ordinance yet, because it will be complicated and confusing, and so when you look at it in the future as an ordinance, it's gonna have amending section this with 5 or 6 points, and this and 5 or 6 points. You won't see the big picture as you're seeing it this evening. You're going to see the fine detail of it. So we wanted to look at this big picture this evening. If this is the direction you wanna go in, then we will write that fine detail and bring that back to you at the next meeting. If not, give us different directions so we can write a different ordinance. But we do need to know if you wanna have the overlay district or if you want this to simply be a plat process. And then if there are other issues that staff hasn't taken into consideration, please let us know those so that we can get that researched and written as well. We'll be happy to answer questions.
Well, I don't know if there's a question or not, but I know I did a lot of driving around in the last couple of weeks, and right behind Jimmy John's, that street west of it, there's like the setbacks where there's not much green space, and then you go out into the community, there's more setbacks where the sidewalks are like this much yard.
Behind Jimmy.
Yeah, right behind Jimmy John's in that place, there's a street there, I don't know what it's called, but there's houses.
Colton Street,
Is it Colton?
that guy in Colton Street.
I think that was back in the probably early 20s or whatever, I don't know when those houses were built, but then you go like to my subdivision and you've got nice yards in front, you know what I mean? That's one of my concerns. I know everything else is too, but I like the green space other than having a sidewalk right by your front door. There's no yard for the kids to play in. So the setbacks was one of the things that you asked, wasn't it, to be?
So the side setbacks we've asked for reduction. The front setback would not change.
Okay.
And the rear setback has not changed.
Okay.
Because again, we didn't change the front setback because that is a setback from the street. You're going to see that where you're putting mixed lots in a project, 75% of those lots are gonna have to meet the 30-foot or the 35-foot or the 40-foot setback. So to have one closer in the middle of the block doesn't make sense. And also, the front setback, reducing it has a real impact on the parking space. Because there's a minimum length to a parking space on a driveway. So you're not going to naturally reduce it very much anyway because you wanna have a parking space. So we've not recommended a change to the front or the rear setbacks.
So then the other thing would be when you got a house, you're gonna have a house right here instead of having the nice yard that we have between my house and my neighbor's yard.
Well,
correct?
right,
The width?
I don't know how big a gap there is between your house and your neighbor's house. But there are places in new subdivisions where it's 15 feet. 15 feet is what is required now, and if you put 2 of these next to each other, it would go down to 10 feet. If you put one reduced size lot next to a regular size lot, it would only go down to 12.5 feet.
So at the bottom of this, it gives the number of acres and the number of lots and the number of
Yes.
additional lots.
Yes,
And at 12 acres, you're looking at 4 additional lots. Is that
correct.
so? I don't really see. I mean, granted, 4 additional lots is better than no additional lots, but I don't see that as being a huge improvement. I feel like we're putting a Band-Aid on a 50 caliber.
Yeah,
you know,
that's, and that's exactly what I was gonna ask too, is this really, is this accomplishing what we wanna accomplish? I mean, are we trying to get more lots so that the developers can, you know?
Well, how many houses can you fit on 2 acres now?
Right now.
according to
According to this,
here,
12.
12.
Six?
6 if you're lucky.
Okay. So you would,
That's your guys' minimum. It's maybe 6.2, something like that.
So that's different than what.
2 acres would be 12, but that doesn't take into consideration, I mean, that's in theory, you've still gotta carve out streets.
sure, but my point is 12 buildable lots, you're gonna allow 4 of those to be minimum lot size, so again, 25% of that development,
No.
right?
On 2 acres, if a standard subdivision allows you 12 single family, the mixed only allows you 13. You don't get 4 extra until you get
You
all
only
the way
get
up
one,
to
yeah.
the 12 acres.
But we don't live in theory. We live in Warrensburg, and if we can get practically, we can get 6 lots on 2 acres then the information we're going off is wrong. Does that make sense?
Right, except
'Cause-
for, I can't give you how many square feet are going to be in the street. Cause you'd have to lay out every possible subdivision. There's too many variables, there's no way
I
to
see
give
your
you that
point, okay.
information.
And you could have some that adjoin existing streets that would not require
Additional right of way
public
or something.
improvements.
Right.
Yeah,
I
there's
got you.
there's so many moving parts on this, it's,
Well, unfortunately, I haven't done this as long as you have. I've been on council about 9 years, so I myself would look to direction of staff and not telling us what to do, but I know it's our recommendation to pass it or not, but I don't have a clue. I'm just gonna be honest with you. I don't know what's right or wrong. I think Warrensburg's been doing great. Now we're trying to change width and is that the right thing to do? If so,
This discussion came about at a request of a developer, Brian
Right.
back here.
I gotcha.
And we're asking the community and developers for more affordable housing. And they're saying it's a struggle for us to build at that 200,000-ish range. And so they asked us to consider lowering the minimum lot size. In recent council meetings, we have had several concerned citizens that have expressed opinion that they don't want to see minimum lot size go down because of the aesthetics and appeal of a community. And so we know that we need affordable housing. We also know that we want to maintain the current aesthetics and control what the look and feel of our community is. And so we asked staff to look at this and see if is there a way to accomplish both. The proposal that was made after some research that Harold presented, which basically the synopsis of the research was, whatever you set your minimum lot size to be, the majority of your future housing additions will be at or near that minimum, because that's how a developer is able to maximize money for their investment in that land, which is understandable. However, we also want to maintain a consistent feel throughout our community for a quality of life standpoint. And so bringing it forward to allow flexibility to mix in a few of these smaller lots along with the larger lots forces the integration of large houses and small houses, large lots, small lots, so we don't have the pockets of small lots, small houses over here and big houses, big lots over here. How do we bring that together so there's more participation from a demographic and financial levels? The hope of this was that by being able to tweak a few of these housing additions that lay a little bit funny, having a few of these smaller lots might allow them the flexibility to make the numbers work for a housing addition that they generally would not develop, would now make it to where it could potentially be financially viable to them. Now the question of, has it gone too far from a community standpoint of, this is too much, this is too small, and I don't like this feel in my community, and I like the green grass and the normal setbacks in the sidewalks, and I like that spacing. And seeing it from the other perspective of a developer that says, I thought you said you needed affordable housing, and is this enough to accomplish the goals that we're trying to promote developers to build in our community, which we need. And so this is an attempt to talk about that balance, and I would, I don't know if we're allowed to open this up, but I know I've talked to several people that have come tonight to be a part of this discussion, and I would, I don't know if we have a sign up or.
Yeah, there's a sign up there.
But if someone was interested in speaking to share their opinion, this is where the rubber meets the road. Whenever you're deciding what is built behind your house or down the street, this is where those decisions are made, and we wanted to, and I know nobody signed up, but we'll reach out, because I know there are some. Pass that down and we'll have them fill it out when you come up. We'll still give you an opportunity to speak. But we would like to hear your opinion as far as what you think about, think of it from the both sides. Are we making it too small? Is this too much? Is this, think about the developers, which we have developers here as well. Is this not enough to accomplish the goal to develop some of this land that's inside the city and keep it affordable housing? And so right now I would entertain you, just if you would like to speak, please raise your hand and we'll try to get to everybody in maybe 3 to 5 minutes. We'll allow you to express your opinion, and we'd be happy to receive it. So.
Well, I have one
I'd like
comment.
to say something. Go ahead, and then I'd like to say something.
Well, one of the things on the setback from house to house is smaller by 5 feet in that one scenario of next to each other, but the square foot of buildable house on the 5,500 lot is slightly bigger than the 6,000 when you look here. So you do give up some yard space between, not front back, but you actually could get a slightly larger house. So it's more livable space. So there's everything we do is trade-off.
One of the persons that I talked to, though, a Broadview house in Cahill is not gonna work, so obviously that's night and day, purple and pink, whatever. So when you're looking at mixed, I understand what Harold was saying, having a senior citizen in a smaller house and then having a larger one beside it, that's kind of, but we're kind of in the real estate is, what's that gonna do to the value of houses? If you're gonna start putting mix in, in Cahill, you're gonna start doing 1,200 square foot instead of 2,200 square foot, what's that gonna do to your value of your home? That would be one of my concerns.
Well, ultimately, that'll be a market decision. I mean, nothing we do here requires a builder to develop this. I mean, they can build all of them at the 7,000 square feet if they want. Nothing here requires them to build any of them at the smaller lot size. But this does provide the opportunity that if they want to build some of those smaller lots and mix those in, this does put a mechanism on there that they can do that they currently don't have.
The research that we did showed in that it was the smaller house that increased greater. The larger house kept pace in the research that we looked up, kept pace with the area around it where it was all larger homes, but the smaller homes increased faster.
Yeah, it's a case of location. You
Right.
buy the smallest house in the best neighborhood, and it's going to go up because everything, yeah.
But it did not harm the larger homes.
No, and I don't think it will either. Right. I don't. And in that scenario, no, I don't think it will either. I mean, I think it's. And personally, I think it's a good idea if we can get some smaller houses in some of these subdivisions. That would be wonderful. But I just don't know if, on 12 acres of 4 additional houses is really comes down to solving any of the problems of being able to get more houses for affordable, living.
Somebody wants to talk.
Justin, come on up.
I'll just point out on this chart where you talk about six lots on a 1 acre piece of ground is not really feasible. Lions Gate, for instance, which is fairly close to the minimum lot sizes, although there are larger lots in there, is 3.1 lots per acre. So you not only have streets, you have stormwater retention requirements and things like that. So anyway, and the other thing I would say is it's really a question of what the city wants, but I see this ordinance as it was written, or as this is proposed, if this is adopted, I really only see that kind of applying to like the scab lot or the leftover. You build your subdivision out to the minimum standards or whatever standards you decide, and hey, you got 6,000 square feet left over. Well, now you can put a lot there because one of them can be this. It really wouldn't make sense to me to do 3 7,000 square foot lots and 5,500 square foot lot. I just don't think. I think what the result of this will be just very, very minimal to the problem that we're talking about. And Mr. Holmberg had put a message on Facebook that I responded to asking for feedback on this. And what I thought might be something that could be considered would be to take the R2 to R4 zoning districts, which already allow for multifamily development at higher density, and to allow single-family lots developed in those zoning classifications to be smaller. So I'm not talking anything about R1. No effect on R1, leave R1 alone, but if you have a R4 district or an R3 district right now where you can have many units per acre. If you went down to, say, a 40-foot wide lot by 110 or 120, whatever it ended up being, as your minimum lot size, you're still going to have far less units per acre than what you would have if you built apartments or if you built fourplexes on that same piece of property. So, but that would give a developer the flexibility in those multifamily zoned areas to say, I personally believe, my opinion, I could be wrong, I don't know everything, is that there is much stronger demand for single family to be developed in our community than more multifamily. We have a lot of multifamily and there's more multifamily being built, but single family, I feel like there's kind of a lid on that because of the expense of development and the cost of land. So I would like to see if we're gonna change something to say in these multifamily, already zoned multifamily higher density districts, let us try building single family lots in those districts that are smaller than the current minimum lot sizes. On a 40-foot wide lot with 5-foot setbacks, that gives you 30 feet to build on. You can build a 3-4 bedroom, 2.5 bath, 2-car garage house, a decent one on that size of a lot. You will have 10 to 15 feet between the houses, but that's not uncommon in other parts of the country at all. So anyway, that's just my thought, is make it easier to build smaller single family lots in multifamily districts where you're gonna end up with less density than if somebody built it to the multifamily standards.
So let me ask you this, cause I don't know everything either, but you've got an R3 and I have you build me a house, but then you still have an R3, you could build an apartment right next to mine, right?
Well,
In an
I'm
R3?
talking about, so you go in and plat your R3, you got a piece of R3 ground, you go in and plat, you're gonna plat them as single family lots. If you replat those as, say, I'm gonna build single family residences on here.
But then you got an R3 and all of a sudden the houses aren't selling, you're thinking, let me throw a fourplex in here or something. It's
Yeah.
already rezoned R3.
Next to it, yeah.
I don't even see that as a major issue. I mean, I've lived in houses that were right next door to a fourplex, and I mean,
I didn't say it was an issue, I was just asking the question.
Yeah, like Clover Creek right now, where you have it toward the entrance, where you have the fourplexes, and then you get into the single family residential. I mean, we manage properties in there, you may also, and there's high demand for that here.
The challenge I see that though is, when you're talking a fourplex, but in an R4, you could build a 50-unit apartment complex. And also traditionally, and this is where it gets challenging, so you're changing an entire culture and system here that has a lot of moving parts to it. So typically we use our zoning to serve as buffers and transition between uses as well. So if we allow single-family homes in this method in R3 or R4, what you're gonna have single-family homes next to manufacturing, next to industrial, next to major commercial, which we continue to get complaints. I mean, that was a complaint for Cahill. I don't wanna see the Dollar Tree distribution center when I look out my back window. Without those buffer zones in place, you're continuing to enable that to happen. And while it may work for the first time builder and buyer, over time within the community, it's gonna have a negative effect. And that's my concern with allowing that in the higher density residential zones, is you really start to undermine that buffering ability of single family homes being protected and buffered from higher dense uses, higher traffic uses, those types of things.
Correct me if I'm, Barbara, is it currently not the case that you can build single family in R4 zone districts now?
Yes, it's an allowed use by right in all of the residential zoning districts.
So we're not talking about changing that.
But it's allowed at the same density as in the single family, so this would be an incentive to go do more of it in R3 and R4. So right now, we're not incentivizing.
I think I'd be much more interested to hear something more like this, where you're essentially saying, okay, this is the area where we're going to, where we want high density residential. We're just formatting the high density differently than what we have traditionally done.
And until you have on the books right now is your PUD.
So
You have that ability with your PUD currently now that is on the books.
But as I understood the PUD, the issue was that the footprint, essentially you would have to get permission from every person in the area once you started selling off to do any changes, because you're locked into a very tight, confined.
But that's the city's protection, that's the trade-off, because we don't have the built-in buffer. You're eliminating that tool of ours, and so the trade-off is the PUD.
In Savannah Commons, they don't have much green in the front and hardly any yards.
Right.
So they can get more in with the PUD in an area.
But I don't see how, or I don't see why we should take away someone's ability to use their property in the most efficient way possible. And it doesn't sound like the way we have our zoning structured currently, it is permitting the property owners to get the maximum benefit that they want, or allowing the market to get what it wants.
And what you're balancing here is the individual property user's right to their property versus the impact it has on the general public. When if they create an issue that the public has to respond to, and use taxpayer dollars to respond to that. So, for example, that's your police services, that's your fire services, that's your park services, that's your street infrastructure. All those things, the more dense you allow people to use their personal property, the more you exasperate those issues. So the denser you become, the more traffic you have on your roads, the more critical your roads become. The denser you become, the less green space everyone has, the more need you have for park space. All that costs the community as a whole to do that. And so that is why you as a council have the right given to you by the state to set these parameters and these rules in place to both protect the greater good, but also give the private property owner the right of use of their property. There's a balance in there. And you can't go too far either way, or you start having significant problems and issues. I don't want to be overly obtrusive, and to be honest with you, our codes are aligned with the best practices of planning and development across the entire country. And we're actually being more progressive than most communities by even having this conversation, because in most communities, this conversation would be dead on arrival. And so here you have a staff that's trying to work and trying to provide an opportunity and a solution. You guys can go kick that door down if you want to. That's within your legal right. That's what you're elected for. You can do that. But what staff is telling you is this is a complex cogwork that's all working together. And what we're telling you is you can do some of these tweaks that let you do some different things. But if you really start going above and beyond that, you're really going to muck up the clockwork of the whole thing. And you're going to have, you may not see those issues in your time as a council member, and I may not see it if I'm here as a city manager. But in 15, 20 years, you're gonna start seeing significant issues if you start putting into place some of these things without considering what staff is recommending you consider.
That's where I said I don't understand it. I have to look to staff to see what they think. There's 5 of us.
So looking at the R1, if we just kind of look at that, so it's a step in the right direction, but you don't think it's significant enough? You think it's gonna be just for those weird lots that lay funny and you only have a couple on a housing addition?
Yeah, that's my opinion, so that's why I'm looking at, like, let's say an R4 district in which you could put 6 dwelling units and 14,000 square feet. Why not put 2 or 3 5,000 square foot single family lots? You're not creating a density problem there, you're having less density than what you could ultimately do. And leave R1 alone if nobody wants to change R1 and make R1 smaller. So that's just my thought. I don't think this ordinance is gonna make a difference.
Whenever you're trying to, because you're working on trying to pencil out a housing addition right now,
Yeah.
is, when you're looking at a housing addition of, 75, 80 lots, does, 4 additional lots, 3 additional lots, is it tight enough when you're trying to do this feasibility study? Is it that tight that it could possibly make a little bit of difference in that, or is it challenging to you're way off trying to pencil it out, is what I'm asking?
Yeah, I mean, so it could, make the math work, let's say, if it was in a marginal case. but you also, you know, as your lots get smaller, generally in a residential lot, they get less valuable as well. So it's not, you know, put as many lots as you can, you're gonna get the top dollar for all the lots. So there's kind of a sliding scale in there, but yeah, you know, we're working on some efficiencies, trying to gain some efficiencies on our subdivision that we're working on right now. Just because the initial bids came in, it's not financially feasible. So we're reworking how we're designing some stuff like that to make it, and I'm hopeful that we're gonna get there. But even then, you know, we're at fairly close to the minimum, not as dense as, let's say, Iron Horse is higher density than what we're trying to do at Lionsgate. But there, like I said, we're getting 3.18 lots per acre out of Lionsgate. So I just wanted to bring that up to say the 6 is not anywhere near where, and probably other people can speak to maybe their experience in that.
Well, as you're kind of working through and penciling some numbers, if you play with the scenarios at all, we have a sheet that we can send to you. I'll send it to you tomorrow. That kind of lays out those setbacks and stuff that we talked about, just so you have it on paper. If you see any potential in that, we'd love to have your feedback as you try and wrap your head around this and see if it does make a difference at all.
Okay, I appreciate that.
All right, thanks, Justin. Anybody else that'd like to speak? To provide any input? Come on up, Susan.
I'm definitely not an expert in the area of development, but I first of all, I just want to thank you for considering this issue. I don't have expertise in development, but I have a little bit of expertise related to the number of children in our community who are living sheltered, but would be considered homeless because their families, and they don't have their own home. So ask any social worker, ask Stormy probably, they could tell you there are hundreds and hundreds of families in our community who are doubled up because they cannot afford their own place. And so I just want to have you keep in mind that we're not just talking about lot sizes and setbacks, that these are human beings who need affordable places to live in our community. So just want to say that. Thank you.
Thanks, Susie. Anybody else that'd like to provide any public input on this? Paul, come on up.
Try not to fall down on the way up here. Yeah, I'm not an expert on this either, but I know a little bit about it. This is a local manifestation of a national problem. Right? It's a vexing problem nationally, lack of affordable housing, and there's, I'm sure you all know, various factors causing that. And this is a genuine question I have, because one factor causing it is when affordable housing is built, there's nothing that stops it from being gobbled up by investors and used as rental property rather than people buying them to live in. I've done that myself. I bought a brand new construction, new built, 2-bedroom, 1-car house would be perfect starter home, very affordable house for one or two or a small family. But I bought it as soon as it was built and used it as a rental house. So I'm curious, you know, that's part of why there's a shortage of affordable housing. That's not the only reason. So I'm curious, is there any, for what affordable housing is constructed, is there any way of knowing that it would end up being owner occupied? That's a genuine question, because I don't know how you would do that.
It'd be, go ahead. I wouldn't think there'd be any legal way where we could
No,
regulate
you don't want
that.
to.
I mean,
Yeah.
Northfield tried that, or Hannes did it.
Yeah.
Where you're living at, they had it in the bylaws, you couldn't have a rental. I had a owner of a house that got transferred to another military base, and both neighbors got mad because I rented it to a family. He was gonna lose his home because he can't sell it, so the only option he had was to rent it.
Yeah.
But it was in the bylaws, and
Yeah, so that's another aspect of the
Yeah.
problem.
so now you've got a family that's renting the home and maybe not taking care of it like an owner would, but somebody could buy all those houses and gobble them up and rent them, like you said.
Yeah.
About the only thing you could do is, you know, is if an HOA was to come in and write it up, but it's gotta hold up in court, and I think it would struggle in court. You know, I know Savannah Commons has something in theirs that, you know, that a person can't own, they can't own one and then also own one as a rental also. So, because I had a deal fall apart there because one of my people was trying to buy that one as a rental, and the HOA came in and said, no, you can't, nobody can own two of them, so.
Looks like we're not attorneys.
Right, and that's, you know, that's the case, and that's.
We can't practice
correct,
law.
you know, so my next response to that is call an attorney and see if an attorney can beat it, and they're like, well, it's not that important to us, let's move on. You know, so, I mean, but, yeah, so, I mean.
Well.
But yeah, no, that is definitely I mean, you know.
Right, because, well, some people will argue, well, it's still, you know, even for a family to move in and rent it, it's a reasonably affordable place, but the rent will be higher than what the house payment is, or an investor would.
Correct.
So it's.
Well, and I know with Susan, we have a lot of problems with people doubling up, but some of those families unfortunately don't have the money to put down to buy a house.
Sure, that's.
You know,
Yeah.
and maybe they can't do the credit report and rent a house or something too, so it's a sad situation,
So I guess,
but we can't take care of
I
it.
mean, I've talked about this at previous council meetings too, but I think this is the best mechanism to approach trying to build affordable housing and then keep it affordable for the future. You know, by theory, in a free market society, you want government to meddle in and manipulate local economy as little as possible. And so when you're talking about affordable housing, what we're talking about is trying to provide a way that smaller, more affordable homes can be built. Other mechanisms that cities would use would be we could cover half the cost of, or all the cost of infrastructure. We could put in streets and sewer and water mains and electric and all that kind of stuff as far as the mains themselves. But the challenge you're gonna have is in a community, a 2,000 square foot home is gonna sell for what the market says it's gonna be. So the first time we sell the house, we may be able to get that down to 150,000, but the second time it sells, it's gonna sell for $200,000.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's not gonna stay affordable. So the only way you manage that is to allow smaller houses to be built. Well, how do you do that when you have minimum lot size requirements, when you have minimum square footage requirements for the actual living space and those types of things? That becomes difficult. And so that's why staff took this approach of, well, maybe we can make some changes in minimum lot size requirements. But again, we have concerns about changing the minimum lot size requirements permanently for everybody, because as studies show, that is what is gonna be built in your community in bulk for the remainder. And I don't know that the community wants all of a sudden for us to quit building 7,000 square foot lots and just build everything 5,000 square feet. I could be wrong. That's why we're here for public input. but-
I think this plan's a step. I just don't think it's a big enough step. I mean, but, you know.
So,
I just think it's worked this how many years. I understand we need affordable housing, but we've already been back and forth on affordable housing, but this, what we have in place now has been working for years.
so
I
with
changed it.
the 78 properties on 12 acres is the best case scenario.
Yes.
And we keep mentioning that 25% of them would be at the smaller lot size. That only equates out to a 5% increase in the number of lots.
True.
So, I mean, if you're looking at a marginal project where it might yes, maybe no, then it may be able enough to push them over into something that's profitable and what works. But that's assuming they can get every lot possible out of 12 acres. So it would essentially have to be a 12 acre long strip of land on a road that already exists to get that number.
Well, it's increasing the overall lot size, but what you also have to consider is that of those lots, 25% of them will now be this smaller size, which will be in the additional price point. So you're not just getting 4 small lots, you're getting 1 out of every 4, which could be this
lower price point.
This other size lot. So, and maybe everybody's already tracking on that point, but I thought it'd probably be more mentioning that the additional ones are not Just the small ones, that 25% will be the smaller size.
But I guess the problem is this chart's probably what's confusing, because we're saying 1 out of every 4, but this chart doesn't indicate 1 out of every 4.
It's the overall increase in number of lots, but
Right,
the
it's
mix
the
would
inc-
still be
Right,
75%,
it's the increase over the
25%.
standard. So
In that
I have a
scenario, of the
different
4
chart.
additional, 1 would be a small lot, 3 would be
So on the
regular
12
size.
acres, a 12 acres would allow, 74.7, so 74 standard lots. At this ratio of 5,500, 1 per 3, you could get 59 standard lots and 19 of the reduced size lots.
Or if you applied Mr. Harris's math and moved that back to the number per acre that he talked about and applied the 6 acre math to a 12 acre subdivision, you would essentially have 40 lots, 10 of which would be the smaller size and 30 of which would be standard.
But the benefit to the contractor would only be the difference in, because for the other 25%, they would be selling at a lower price.
And at a lower unit cost. The overall percentage profit would likely be close to the same.
Right. And now now that you the way you said that, now I understand the chart now. Okay.
Yeah.
Because you're still gonna have, it is 1 out of every 4, but by doing that, it causes an increase of 4 additional lots. So okay, now
Which
I
could
see.
be standard size at the higher profit.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay,
So
Right, in fact, some
right
of the,
now
some
now
of
that you
them
said
are
it that way,
because-
the math I got the math now. So okay.
Yeah, 'cause-
But-
yeah, because there are, when you feed the numbers into the equation,
Right.
you may have 2 more lots, but that didn't get you a 3rd one, so you didn't get a smaller one.
Right.
So some of your extra are the larger.
Can you say that again? I don't think I tried.
The overall additional lots are not small lots, they are overall lots, like the regular sized lots that could be added.
You
And
could
every
get
time
4
you get a
7,500 square foot
additional lot, you're gonna get 1 more small lot.
Okay, seriously.
And
And
then
that-
bear in mind that the cost of infrastructure doesn't change, so when you put in streets and sewer mains and those types of things,
Right.
those all stay the same, so by allowing additional, even if it's 2 lots, you're potentially increasing the profit margin of the builder, because that's 2 lots that they wouldn't have been able to build before and sell. But their infrastructure costs are
They're
exactly the
still
same.
gonna build that run of street.
Yeah.
I got you.
They have to
Okay.
build that street, they have to put in that sewer main, they have to put in that water line, all that stuff they're gonna put in regardless of whether you're letting them build 10 houses or 12 houses, it's gonna be the same. So by allowing them 2 more houses, you potentially increase the profit margin of the developer in doing that.
And I do think that overall it works for the community, but it doesn't work for a subset of people that, as a community, I've heard before council and then currently on council and the survey we had that affordable housing. So I think it's incumbent upon us to take an incremental approach and try some things that are not overly radical, but yet move us in the direction to solve that. I don't think inaction is the best approach in this case. And so I don't know all the actions we should take, but I think we need to move forward working this.
But I gotta be kinda on Harold's side a little bit on, we gotta watch what we're doing, cause this is gonna be the future.
I totally
I
agree,
understand we
which
need
is why-
affordable housing, but also we've got to watch, as a council member, what do you do? So it doesn't hurt the community.
So general consensus is that this is a step in the right direction
It's a step.
from promoting
It's a step.
additional development. It's not so big a step that all the neighbors in the community's gonna be in an uproar over changing the minimum lot size. But it is a small step forward, and we can see what our appetite is for this as a community, as well as was this enough to incentivize development to build affordable houses, and if not, we can go up, see how it goes and go up another notch or receive the feedback that was a little too far.
I predict that you're gonna see that very quickly in the next 12 to 18 months as you have plats come in.
Well, there, at some point, I'd like to sit down with Barbara and go over this a little bit so I can get a little bit better educated on it. I don't think I quite understand it enough, so I need to learn a little bit more. Within the next, well, Christmas coming, so before that, or after that, I don't care.
Well, but it hits the 6th.
Depending on the direction of council tonight, I mean, you're gonna have other council meetings to discuss this, so we have time, but.
Is there direction on whether you want it to be a plat process only, or a plat and a legislative process with public hearings?
I would
We wanna
want.
look at the location, but we're just, you made the requirement, you have to.
My only hard part on the location, and I may not be on the council in 2020 after April, but I don't want it to be the individual, like if somebody did it over here, but you're not gonna let them do it here. You gotta watch that, I think, myself. Location, Lionsgate versus, I don't even know where there's another subdivision.
So yours would be a vote for allow it by right?
I like allow it by right because
would be.
there's
I
never
don't
gonna
wanna
be a
be one of
place
those.
that's not in somebody's backyard. It's just never going to happen.
Yeah, I
It's
agree.
always gonna be in somebody's backyard. So allow it by right is what I would say.
If that's what the ordinance says, then that's my vote.
And that's our current process.
That's the plat process,
Yes.
which
Yep.
would be, right, so we would write it into the zoning ordinance by right, and then if they meet the math, they meet the numbers, then plat's approved.
Yeah, I would be supportive by right.
Is there any other conditions, issues, concerns that you have that you wanna make sure are reflected in there?
We have, Brian has a thought real quick.
Sorry, I was
Yeah, come on up. We wanted to hear your feedback.
I agree with Justin's statement on leaving the R1 alone where we have still an R1 district, in town. It doesn't change anything of what that is. Like if you have an R4, R3, R2 or something that you wanna go in and do mass residential, just my opinion, and everybody's got one here. But for instance, I built an apartment here in town, it's 100 by 125 foot lot, it's 12,500 square foot, and I got 10 units. That's 1,250 square foot per unit. It's zoned R4. So if you take a 17-acre piece of ground, for instance, at 43,560 square foot, you have 740,000 square foot of ground, divided by 1,250 square foot, like an apartment builder could probably build in town, you'd get 592 units according to your code, minus some parking detention maybe, so let's just cut it to 500 units. If a developer had the 17 acres of ground and you got 5.5 lots per acre versus your 3.2 standard of where we're at today with streets, right-of-ways, ordinances and stuff like that, you'd have 93 residential houses versus 500 plus R4 units. So that's my only, if you already have something that's slated R4, planning commission, council, or whoever zoned it, whatever zoning's been in effect, and we can build affordable housing with the urban housing money. Now I think it's 174,000 with that USDA loan. You can't be over the 174,000 for the first time buyers. I'm not alone.
I know what the finance numbers are. I don't know what the numbers
Yeah, I
for
think
the
it's
max value of the house
174
is.
to get a first time buyer to qualify for the house, with no money down.
Yeah. A family of four is under 80,000.
But if we
Family of
go
four is
over
under 80,000. So
200 today, like Lionsgate, looking at the numbers at Lionsgate, these guys and the cost of construction, they're gonna be in the 220s to 240s, in Lionsgate. So again, you think you have a starter house lot that we don't have today. So, but they're back to the 3.18, acres to, it doesn't go back to the developer, it goes back to the math of the lots. The developer deserves to make a margin and profit, but me as a spec builder or a build job builder, you also wanna be able to sell your house and sell your product. So if you're over that, you have to hit that fine line of where you're at, to sell that product. And today in Hawthorne, we're in the 250s,
oh god,
260s.
yeah.
6 years ago,
Yep.
the same house would have sold for $159,000.
Right.
I wish I had them all back,
Mhm.
and I can market them
Yeah.
there, but I don't have that, so.
Well,
I
when
mean,
I
I-
started selling real estate, the first time home buyer was 49,000,
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
Fox Ridge, now they're,
Mhm.
like, what, 180,000 is what they're selling
Yeah,
for?
more.
I actually sold 2 of his houses brand new, and they were like 175,
I wish I had
and
those
I
back.
just resold both of those houses for 2.25.
Yeah.
So I mean,
So like you said,
know.
it's affordable now, but it's not gonna be in.
And I agree with that, I
won't be.
mean, and you can't change, look, Broadview, same thing,
Yep.
they sold, you know,
Yep.
for
Yeah.
$20,000,
I bought one for
$18,000, now they're
32,000.
130s,
Yep.
140s, I mean, so.
32,000 was the first
But
one.
today, with what we're at, that's all, and it goes back to this, to a lineal foot of street, you take a measurement, go down the center of the street, and that's what it's costing per foot. We did it at Eternity Village, and it was about $180 a foot, a running foot. Today, you spec the street, and we're spending about $360 a foot. And that's just in a matter of the last 5 years, so, or 6 years, so that's what it's costing. Concrete's going up again to 2020, everything else is following suit. You guys know what the numbers are, you see it on your city budget. Just trying to get that lot, so if you go down the center line of the street with a wheel, and so it's cost per foot of running street, and if you can get more lots to that street is what we're gonna have to do to make it affordable, or somebody can get $173,000 house, you know, but or do 4 plexes or 6 plexes and split them individual units, and you can go back to this 590 some unit math. I mean, that's just, I don't have a layout of that, but that's, or a 4-story apartment complex, you know, so.
Well, Mr. Harris said one thing, we have a lot of apartments.
I agree with that.
I totally
Yeah,
agree with that.
Yeah, so that's all I have.
Thanks, Brian.
And don't trust all my math, but that's pretty.
Especially done that quick, right?
Yeah. You're smoking numbers.
Yeah.
What do you got from us, Barb, other than by right?
I got by right, I'm not hearing other issues other than just do something totally different. So if we're gonna do this, it sounds like.
I mean, I like something, I do like something different, but I don't think that.
Right, and I'm not ruling out,
Right.
do something totally
Yeah.
different.
Right, but it's
I
a
mean,
little bit
it
more
is.
complex issue when we're talking
Right.
about zoning barriers, and I bought my starter home, and this is where I wanted to raise my family, and then something goes next door, and so there's a lot.
Right.
There's viability from making numbers work, but we're gonna definitely get some pushback, on that, so we might get there someday, but the step, I
I
think.
think everything just goes up, like you said, concrete and all that.
It's gonna continue.
It's gonna
So,
continue.
So let me ask this question, so if this doesn't go far enough, or you wanna do something different, what are you wanting the end result to be?
I mean, I'd like to do, I mean, personally I'd like to see 5,000 square foot lots. I mean, I'm not,
What's the result you want though? Not what's the number, what's the goal of this discussion?
I wanna be able to see if we can get the prices down again. I mean, yes, they're gonna go back up again. I mean, it's, you know,
But I got some
it's the
2-bedroom
housing
apartments that are $1,200 a month for 2-bedroom apartments.
Yeah.
That's,
Mhm.
you know, they were probably this much, that,
Oh,
so I feel like it's a little bit of a Band-Aid if we're gonna do it. Once again, you sell a 5,000 whatever lot for, let's say, what are you looking, 160 something for a first-time buyer?
Probably 180.
And you know what it's gonna be in 5 years, you're gonna be selling it for 220.
So you want all 5,000 square foot lots?
I would like to see something in certain zoning areas of the 5,000 square foot lots. I mean, if we're not, you know, R1 is R1.
So you're talking about creating
Right.
another.
Correct. Create another
Level,
either another level.
R1B or
correct.
whatever. Okay.
You know, I mean, I think that accomplishes the best scenario that gives us the chance to get the prices down. You know, now, obviously through this discussion, I don't think that the whole council has that stomach. So, I mean, I'm not against this idea. I just don't think this idea goes far enough.
So if we create a new zoning designation, how much of that zoning designation are you gonna allow? What keeps you from, every time a developer come in, give you the story, can't get to work, you need to build 5,000, so every request you have coming forward for a new housing development, they're all asking for that one development. No one's building in R1 anymore, no one's building in R2, May have a few building in R3 or R4 for apartment complexes, that stuff, but for your single family housing, every request comes in for that R1B, we all wanna build 5,000 square feet. How do you control that?
And I'll be honest with you, I don't have the answer to that. I mean, and it's, everybody's right, this is a very complex thing, I just, you know,
I have a quick question. If you say I wanna go down to 5,000, then shouldn't you just put a minimum size of house that goes on that you can't have something bigger, so they have to have a bigger lot for the more expensive homes? I mean, you're saying everybody would wanna go down to 5,000, but you can't put, I mean, then you could say this is the size of home for this size of lot, but this is the size of home
You
for
have
this
to have
size.
a maximum size home, because you have a minimum size
Yes.
now.
So why can't you still do that? I mean, 'cause you're saying that everybody will wanna build on the 5,000, but obviously you can't put a huge house on a 5,000, so if you have your minimum size for.
Well, the example he gave was actually with the smaller lot, you can build a bigger house than what, on the smaller lot than you can on the 7,000 square foot lot.
Only because of the reduced side setbacks.
Correct.
Right.
But it is bigger than the 6,000, but
So,
yeah.
one of the other things you don't think about, every action has a reaction on this.
Correct.
Typically, our, utility and storm drainage easements are they're 15 foot wide.
Mhm.
So, we wouldn't be able to have easements located between two houses, because you only got 10 feet in there.
Right.
And
I was-
It's impossible working in a 10 foot utility.
Yesterday I was over in Nodnoster and back there behind where the post office is and stuff. And you may know who it is. I don't know who it is, but somebody's back there building, and they're building basically straight houses, 1-car garage, stairs go up, living areas all upstairs. You know, I don't know what the square footage is of them. I haven't seen any of those listed yet. But I mean, it's a very simple build. You know, it's not. I mean, you're not looking at it going, wow, that's a really fantastic house, but it's livable houses for people who, you know, who are trying to get that. I mean, when we're bringing in industries that are paying employees, you know, the median average is what's Dollar Tree, 24,000, I think, is 28,000 is the, you know, so we got to figure out some way we can get prices for people to buy in that market and where we can rent in that market, because right now, I mean, everything is going up. I mean, I own rental properties. All my rental properties has gone up because, you know, the demand such is there. So it's you almost.
And taxes.
So well, you know.
Gotta keep up with the taxes.
Correct. I mean, I bought mine when I bought my properties. I bought them. They were written for $400, and I've got them at $525 now. You know, that's over a 7-year time frame. But you know, I'm realistic when I break it down financially. I'm probably not making any more money because you're right, taxes are more. You know, I mean,
If I can make a suggestion, what you looked at tonight is conceptual, and anytime you're in a planning and zoning setting, the devil is gonna be in the details in the drafting. And so if it would be all right with council for staff to work on a more detailed actual ordinance that's going to bring to light some of the complexity that's been talked about tonight, I think that might be easier to get your hands around when you see what those details are actually going to look like.
I think that's a great idea, because I don't have a clue. What the builders need, I don't know the size of lots and.
That's gonna definitely spark discussion that's gonna help point us in the right direction, so I would agree with that.
You know, my other thing is, and I've said this many times in council meetings, is that I see some people have showed up and they've all spoke for it. The ones that are against it, I would really like to see them show up and tell me why they're against it.
They'll be here.
So, I'm not afraid to see them.
Just wait till April or May 1, 2020.
Yeah, I got this seat for another year, and then I'm done.
you
So.
Does everybody have a stomach for that? What we're talking, what Doug proposed, kind of start.
Some visual.
We know that this is a small step in the right direction. It's something that we can all get behind. Some think it's not far enough, but we're going to expose some of these things that we're talking about in finalizing this.
If we don't like it, we can just keep it the way it is.
And we can always push it a little further if we don't feel like it's enough, but I think this is a good first step. All right, there's your consensus.
Have fun.
Thank you for all the feedback, impromptu feedback in the public. Thank you. Moving on to item 8.7, a rental inspection program discussion.
Anticipate this conversation being somewhat brief. All I'm asking is, I would recommend that the council put together a citizen committee task force to help assist researching this and looking at this and coming back with some recommendations for council on behalf of the community. So I would like to ask the council to consider who would be good
I would like to be on that.
to
I
be
was
on
gonna
that committee.
nominate you for that.
Thank you.
What I would envision would be is having this committee beginning to convene probably late January and work for a couple months. I think staff would like to go over some ordinances other communities use for this program, and then maybe even go visit some of these communities to see how they administer that, how they do inspections, et cetera, and then come back with some recommendations of what makes sense for Warrensburg. And so all I'm really asking tonight is for you guys to begin thinking about that. And I would encourage you to think about all aspects of this and not just try to
I think it's a great idea.
not put it all just committee of supporters. I think you need some people that have some pretty strong opinions against it as well, so we can have a good dialogue back and forth about what this means and what the impacts are, and we can help educate ourselves better on this moving forward. So, and it should be a mix of all parties. So hopefully there's a representation from the base, there's representation from the university. We have developers and rental property owners and normal citizens. And
Renters.
They're renters, so there's a good mix there, everyone that's impacted by this decision, so that we can have a good dialogue on that. Obviously, another thing to probably consider is how big of a group you want. The bigger you get, the harder it is to come up with anything. But so you want that mix and representation, but at the same time, you want a group that's manageable, that can have a meaningful conversation. So
I would like to see like another community myself before this got formed, of how it's working with them and how it got to where it's at. Cause there's gotta be other communities that are doing these rental property inspections, you know what I mean?
yeah, and that's
So this is new to me. I don't like the slum landlords that have mold in their houses and the tenants can't go to anyone and say, I can't live here anymore. I mean, they need to have a voice. They don't need to live there with no heat. They don't need to live there with mold, but they can't afford to move.
sure. And that's exactly what staff would like to do with this committee is we have, staff has done a lot of work of researching ordinances of communities that already have these on the books. And we're aware of some communities that have already done this. The city of Moberly has this, Grandview just started this, and there's others. And so we want to be able to provide information to this group so they can go through it in detail, consider all options, and then discuss a recommendation of what would be a good program if Warrensburg was to adopt one going forward.
But I'd also like to see what, obviously there's programs that are in place right now, but I really would like to see what did Sedalia try to pass, because I know they tried to get one through and basically ran their mayor out of town.
Sure.
And then, I know Marshall just tried to do one, and they had a packed house at the council meeting, so.
Well, there's a lot of things that go in with that, which is why I'm encouraging you to do this process. So
Right.
we get a lot of that discussion, we get a lot of those opinions on the table, and we can discuss those in a meaningful way before we get far enough that people are frustrated.
Right.
Not to guarantee that the process will guarantee that everyone will be happy with the end result, but
Right.
at least they'll have an opportunity to share their
I mean, I'm
opinion,
not-
know that it's heard and looked at and researched.
Can we have 2 council members on or 1 council member?
That's at the discretion of you guys, what you would like to do. I would like to have a committee in place by late January so that we can begin meeting and educating and researching.
How would we choose the members for that? Would
I know
would it
about
be
9
like
of them in my
appointment
head
to?
right now, cause I know the landlords, I know the builders, you know what I mean?
I would recommend ask staff to do a little research and to provide a basic framework of what you would recommend the number of folks on the board and what areas you think we need to make sure have representation, and then once we have something fairly on paper that we can look at, we can tweak and change and discuss it a little easier. And we could say we want a bigger board, we want a smaller board, this is what we want them to do. I think
Well, Marty,
let
you've
them
got
do the
some right
research.
already that have people, do they have these that they started as a board?
I don't know how they
You
started.
don't know how they started, that's what I'd be interested
Grandview's
in.
the only one I know how sort of got started.
We're just trying to get
Yeah.
through that learning curve. Let's learn as much as we can from our community as well as other communities that have done this and kind of hit the ground running. So
Would the board have a expiration date?
It'd only be a forum for this purpose, and then once they provide a recommendation, unless you guys see any purpose for it to
Ordinance.
continue, it would dissolve.
Okay.
I wouldn't even create it by ordinance, it's just a task force that.
No, I mean, once the ordinance is placed for the rental inspection, then the board doesn't need to be there.
I would encourage staff to do a little research and to make a recommendation on what that framework should look like, and then we can make small tweaks and hash it out.
In the meantime, if you can start thinking of people that you think would be good to sit on that board to help with that conversation, the sooner you can do that, the better.
I can have them names tomorrow.
I'd say as you get framework, maybe email it to council so we can kind of start getting our heads wrapped around it a little earlier. Okay. All right, moving on to item 9, appearances to the council not listed on the agenda. Anybody sign up to speak that did not get the opportunity to speak?
I think, I've got the only one here, Rich.
So
We got it up here. I think everybody's here and spoke already.
Okay.
Unless Laura wants to say something. You're the only one that spoke out here.
Next, we have item 10, mayoral appointments. I have 2 that was sent out to you via email. An application from Paul Schaefer for the tree board, and a reappointment of Steve Westhead, who's currently serving on the planning and zoning board.
Move to approve.
Brooks,
Yes.
Jacobs.
Yes.
Holmberg,
Yes.
Allen,
Yes.
Lunt.
Yes. Miscellaneous matters from the mayor and/or city council. Anybody got anything for the good of the cause?
No, I just wanted to, Jill, you weren't here earlier, we were doing the survey and downtown, look at downtown, it increased quite a bit, so I wanted to shout you out. Thank you.
Everybody just have a Merry Christmas. I won't see you till next year, right?
And city manager report.
I don't know that I have a whole lot to report other than what's already in the report. Obviously, most of my time has been spent on all the items on the agenda tonight, so it's been a busy couple of weeks. So I don't have anything over and above that, other than it's a brief financial report. Revenues are coming in fairly well. They kind of ebb and flow like they usually do, but so far for the year, we're a little ahead of schedule with response to that. Auditors were in last week, so we're in the auditing process and going through all of that. I'd like to thank Rachel for stepping in and filling in as the interim finance director. Our new finance director will start December 16th. We're excited to get her on board next week. And things should continue to hopefully move forward fairly smoothly. She brings a lot of experience and pretty familiar with the software and everything that we use as well. So we're excited to get her on board and get the audit done and then get geared up and ready for budget discussion again after the first of the year. So.
Anything to add, Rachel?
Mm-hmm.
Hope to see you all out Thursday afternoon for Slim's retirement reception. And after that, I have nothing additional.
Slim?
The Cheatham storm drainage project is underway. We sent out the public information that roadways will be shut down, so hopefully we don't get a lot of weather. And, been a long overdue project, we're fixing to get it on running now. Should release some issues down that area.
How long do you think that's gonna take, Tony?
Depending on what the weather does for us down there. It could be, you know, they can have pretty much the pipe lay, that work done in 2 weeks, but, with the inlet structures and the concrete work, it's gonna take a little longer, and we do have some utility relocates that have to be done first. The conflicts that went down after we got started digging, so there always are.
Marcy?
Nothing additional.
Tracy, anything from JCDC?
No, sir.
Jill, Main Street? Suzanne, Chamber?
I do, sorry. I just want to say thank you very much to Maryland and City Public Works, especially for our partners, Main Street CBB, for a great holiday parade on Friday. Went very well, so thank you very much for all of your support.
Well, Dickinson was awesome too. I had a great time down there.
Craig?
I just wanted to extend a thank you to all of you who helped this last week with our celebration of the city workers and celebration of their anniversaries. I was very successful and very, very good turnout, and they greatly appreciated your participation in that. So, thank you for that.
Chief?
Hoping to be fully staffed by the end of this month for the first time in a long time, cut down on some of that overtime.
I wish I could say the same thing. I cannot, in spite of hiring 3 new people today. We are also going to have a promotion ceremony on the 17th at 4:30 in the evening. So I'd like to invite all of you to that. We'll have one retirement created like 5 promotions. So Jeff Reynolds will be promoted to lieutenant, Carl Stotts promoted to sergeant, Mike Bilbrook, Andrew Frazier, and Sharon Miller to corporal. So great time for them, and would like to invite you guys to that. December 19th, I've been invited to be part of a mental health roundtable. It's pretty exciting. They're reaching out to elected officials, so you may hear from them. They're wanting to do like an assessment of our needs in Johnson County. It's a company hoping to bring not only a crisis center, but also a school to the area. And so I'm excited to be part of that. They already provide services to the school district here in Warrensburg. They have 5 kids that travel to Kansas City each day, so they're trying to get some funding to open up a center here, and so we'll be doing that at the community center on the 19th from 3 to 5. And lastly, we have Shop with a Cop on Monday, so Monday. It'll be out at the Johnson County Fairgrounds, so a great time for us to partner with our community. We are expanding this year. We have 51 kids. Normally we've done 28. The sheriff's office is on board this year, and nearly every police agency in Johnson County. So credit to Jason Gilbert for his leadership and thinking broader term for reaching out to kids who would normally have Christmas, and so we're happy to be able to do that for them.
So you're bringing them to Walmart still, or is that what the?
Yeah, we'll go to we're gonna be at the police academy since we need a little more space. We outgrew the police department in their gym, and we'll head from there via parade to Walmart and shopping, and then go to the fairgrounds where we'll have dinner. The neat thing about it is the families come back and share dinner with the police and the non-sworn staff who are involved. So it gives us a chance. You hear me talking about creating positive community interactions when we're on a call. This is like money in the bank for the whole year for us. So it's really a tremendous time. I think it not only helps the families, but I think it does more for us as police to be able to see people in a different light. And so it's gonna be really fun.
Well, I've said this many times, Chief, as far as policemen aren't scary. So when you start with this relationship with these kids little, I think it's a positive.
Yeah, and one of the things we look at, some of the kids are need-based, some of the kids are at-risk based, where their families have had nothing but negative interactions with the police, so we're trying to correct that. And, so it's really neat. I love that we've expanded it all over Johnson County, so we've got kids from all the school districts here, even from Concordia. Paul Mapes, I don't know if y'all remember Paul Mapes, he's the chief in Concordia now. Too small to do it on his own, but he wanted to participate, and so he's bringing some kids here, and they also, they've got some plant up there. They're giving out hams to all the families. I can't remember what the plant is.
Harmel's or something like that.
Is that what it is?
Or Hammonds or something. Hammonds or yeah.
Some ham place up there.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. Big farm.
You're welcome to come be part of it. We'll be out at the academy to start for a very short period of time, but come out to the Johnson County Fairgrounds for the after, and we'll feed you dinner.
Doug, anything? No? Ryan?
Session.
I do.
Okay. Cindy?
Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, city council filing begins at 8 a.m.
Oh, yeah.
We'll have 2 positions available.
Not me.
So, anyway, I'll be here at 8 o'clock.
Got anything additional? Robin?
Nope.
Harold? Want to echo what Suzanne said about thanking police and fire and public works for the hard work they did for the city, as well as
Main Street and the Chamber and the WCVB, the hard work that they put into making a very successful and fun holiday parade and tree lighting coordination with the county. Moving forward, we have a verbal agreement that the county will provide a Christmas tree in the location where the tree is now. Public Works has passed along the line, so it continues even after Slim to decorate the tree so that our community can have not only a Christmas tree but a tree lighting year after year to coincide with the holiday parade. So it's cool to see that going forward. And now we're going to move to go to closed session. So I guess I'll go ahead and read it. I got it teed up here. All right. Vote to close part of this meeting pursuant to section 610.021 of the revised statutes of Missouri relating to 1, legal actions, causes of actions, or litigation involving the city and any confidential or privileged communication between the city and its representatives and its attorneys. 2, leasing, purchase, or sale of real estate where public knowledge might adversely affect the amount paid in the transaction. 3, hiring, firing, disciplining, or promoting of particular employees by a public governmental body when personal information about the employee is discussed or recorded. 12, documents or any documents related to a negotiated contract until a contract is executed or all proposals are rejected. And 13, individually identifiable personnel records, performance ratings, or records pertaining to employees or applicants for employment.
Brooks.
Yes.
Jacobs.
Yes.
Holmberg.
Yes.
Allen.
Yes.
Bunt.
Yes. Call meeting adjourned. Thanks, everybody. Much stuff to sign.
He'll be up here in just a minute.
Are we gonna head across the street?
Go and sign these first.
Grab some signatures.
Yeah. Oh, you got more.
You have the seats with
I'm going back that way.
Okay, I'll go with you. We just start with that packet.
Bring a good pen or you got one?
I think that would. You want a blue? I got a blue jacket.
Alright, here we go. So, here, you'll do all of that stuff.
Yeah. Just sign.
The work that
Those I tried.
staff did.
They took, sure, I don't think I missed